So Wendy, you're one of the main producers of this film, and you are, of course, Maynard's daughter-in-law. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the origins of this project for you and for the family, and why you felt it was so important to share this story?
Well, actually, this was Maynard III's idea. He woke up one January morning in 2015 and said, I really want to do something about my father. There's a high school in Atlanta called the Maynard Jackson High School, and some of the kids didn't realize the impact of who he was. And he said, I want my dad's legacy preserved. So this was his idea. I'd been in the industry for a long time, but he felt confident that we could put together a team.
Sam Pollard, if you can tell us about, what was your entry into this project, and how much did you know about Maynard going into it versus what you obviously found out while making the film?
I got a call from Wendy. I guess it was a call. They had seen another film I had done called Slavery by Another Name, and they had liked the team associated with that film, and they asked if I would.
Yes, fantastic film.
They asked if I would come on board to direct it, and I think I went to Atlanta. We met, we talked, and we felt each other out, and seemed to feel right. And so I said yes. But it was interesting. You know how things come around. Way back in like 1975, when I was a young editor, I had worked on a little documentary that was directed by Gordon Parks' son, David Parks, and it was about, at the time, 3 black mayors: Tom Bradley in Los Angeles, Coleman Young in Detroit, and Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. It's the first time I had been introduced to Maynard back in 1975.
Wow.
So it was like it came around.
Comes around, yeah.
It came around, and so then we started the long journey.
Reverend Sharpton, if I can ask you, can you talk about Maynard's, any kind of personal impact Maynard had on you? You knew him. Can you talk a little bit about sort of any kind of inspiration or interaction you had with him?
He meant a lot to me because he spent a lot of time helping a lot of us that were like a generation behind. And he kind of understood that we didn't know all that we thought we knew, but he knew that what he planted in us, even if we wasn't from Atlanta, would one day make sense. So that's why I was honored to say something in the film, because it wasn't just kids in Atlanta he inspired. He inspired a race all over the country. He was literally Obama before Obama, and he brought the money. He set a model for how a black mayor ought to leave black folks differently than how he found them. And he did that. And every time anyone goes to Atlanta Airport, they should remember that it's a capital of black economic development, right, because of Maynard Jackson.
So Marc Morial is with the Urban League, but was the mayor of New Orleans for several years, and so that's a perfect segue into what lessons did he serve for you coming later than him in politics.
This is 2017. This is the 50th anniversary of the ascendancy of African American mayors, with Dick Hatcher and Carl Stokes, and then Kent Gibson, and then in '73, Coleman Young, Maynard Jackson, and Tom Bradley. And my father came along in 1977. And these men were what I call founding fathers of black political empowerment. Because as Reverend Sharpton said, before Obama, they were black mayors. If you look at what Barack Obama experienced in office, everything from high expectations to absolute resentment and backlash, the experiences of Obama were the experiences of Maynard Jackson, Coleman Young, Tom Bradley, Dutch Morial, David Dinkins, Harold Washington. It mirrors, because the executive power trumps the legislative power. Contracts, personnel, money, the ability to truly change the direction of a community, in the case of a president and nation.
Let me ask a little bit about the family archive and sort of all of the great footage that you got in there. Can you talk a little bit about the process of sort of giving that over to Sam and sort of putting that story together, and sort of how long it took to kind of pull everything together and find that structure?
Well, In Georgia, the WSB, which is the ABC affiliate in Atlanta, which is also it's owned by Cox Media, which also owns the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's mostly the archives are held at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! University of Georgia Archives. So fortunately for us, thanks to the benevolence of Cox Media, they allowed us to go in, do research on the AJC side. Dr. Maurice Hobson, who is here, who's also featured in the film, he had done a lot of research as well. Our director had pulled from Gary Pomerantz. There's a book called Where Peachtree Meets Sweet Auburn. Was able to extrapolate a lot of information from there. And then, of course, as we kind of set what the story was, Sam was able to give direction to the editor and the researchers. You need to find this, find that. And there's a lot of footage that we could find, but there's more footage we couldn't find.
Right,
so.
sure.
But the thing that's always important with documentary filmmaking is the deep dive into researching and trying to find as much material, both archival footage and stills and newspaper headlines. And they were pretty dogged, because I'm pretty obsessive about this stuff. So they kept looking and looking and looking. Every time they couldn't find it, you got to find it. It must be somewhere. So they did find it. I mean, it was, and it's amazing to see some of this footage of Maynard Jackson. I mean, he was well covered. You know, he was a very well-known politician. He was well covered. So, you know, that's an important part of the process, to really search out in material, to find it, to find in every nook and cranny, to look for material. And we also had the family who had stuff that we could use, that we got from them, that was invaluable material.
If I can ask you again, Reverend Sharpton, within the current political climate, what lesson do you think that Maynard's example can give to us?
Our young people need to see, in this climate that is so hostile and that is so divisive, that if you look at what Maynard was able to do in the South, running against a Herman Talmadge, who was, you know, the president with steroids, and be able to achieve what he did, but not lose his grace and his dignity and his integrity. It's a lesson, and it's an inspiration. How dare we think we can't handle a Trump when he could come up against a Herman Talmadge in the Deep South? So I think it's a lesson that we really need out here right now. And I know when they started the project, no one ever imagined that Trump would be president. We still are trying to believe it, but I think that the timing of this and what he was able to do, where he was able to do it, but who he maintained himself being, he did not become like the people he was fighting. And that's, I think, a lesson. And he went up against a lot of black backlash. The whole thing with the Atlanta boys being killed, children being killed, and the whole Jose and them used to jump on. He had the same flack that Marc and I saw Obama take, but it was 30, 40 years before. I think our young people need to understand that we've been here before, and we handled it before. We can handle it now.
Excellent.